Welcome to Park Sessions with your host, Mac,
Kari,
and Vanessa at the park,
where we discuss what's on our mind this week. Let's talk about current events, pop culture, conspiracies, and more. So sit back and join in on the latest sesh at the park.
Hi guys, and welcome to today's episode of Toxic Relationships. So today we're going to be talking about a bit of relationships, friendships. So welcome guys for today's sesh.
Yeah, we've got some interesting topics to cover today, and we've definitely got a lot to talk about.
And I think it's a lot of our experiences too, mostly. So I think it'll be really interesting to, have this conversation because I think it's really needed.
Yeah, definitely. And we will definitely cover the topics of what also influences toxic relationships, what it looks like, what to look out for, and basically the red flags.
Yeah, we all need
all the red flags.
We all need to learn red flags because, we will avoid a lot of toxicity in our lives.
And even one thing I learned, I started talking to some friends of mine, not just talking about red flags, but also green flags and what are healthy signs of someone who's actually healthy. Sometimes we need to talk about what's healthy, not just what's toxic.
Yeah, that's great because when I started a relationship with my partner, I was always talking about what I thought were red flags, and you guys were like, no, that's a green flag. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know that was a green flag.
I think it's also because once you've been burnt by a very toxic relationship, going into the next relationship, and if you haven't completely healed, sometimes we do think green flags tend to be red flags.
Yeah, definitely.
Or this is too good to be true.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So I feel like a lot of us do fall into that category as well.
Yeah, even some of the girls that I'm talking to, I know a new girl that's just started in the relationship, and she was like, oh, he's just too nice. And I'm like, that's not bad. It's not a bad thing.
Exactly. I totally relate. And I think it's good to know the red flags so you also know what the green flags are.
Definitely. So Kari, what is a toxic relationship?
So toxic relationships is any time you're in a relationship where you don't feel safe, where you don't know where you stand with a person. A lot of times you feel very unstable, and that sort of bleeds into other areas in your life, and it also affects other relationships because especially with your family or friends, you're going to have that issue. So when you're in that toxic relationship, a lot of times you don't really even notice that you're in this relationship, and a lot of times some people and friends and family might not want to say things because they don't know how that's going to affect their relationship. But yeah, it's a lot of times I find that would be...
Definitely.
What do you think a toxic relationship is?
Well, I definitely think a toxic relationship is, obviously it's a relationship, and that has a negative effect on the person in it. Whether it's abusive, physical, mental, spiritual, if you want to get into that. I feel like anything that takes away from you and damages you is definitely a product of a toxic relationship. And, there's a whole broad spectrum of toxicity in relationships, and it could be something small, it could be minor to extreme. And I feel like in this day and age there's been more education on it, and more of like a light shed on toxicity in relationships. And I definitely feel that being in a toxic relationship once upon a time and being a victim of it, I do know what it feels like to be in one, and I only learnt how to identify it when I've left the relationship.
Yeah, and like what you said, with toxic relationship, there's been a major education of it through TikTok, and that's where I learned a lot from the start of the pandemic, from 2022, was it?
2020.
2020, sorry, wow.
Yeah, it's 2 years of the pandemic.
Yes, we all went through that. So in 2020, that's when TikTok started building, and a lot of people put their thoughts in about toxic relationship, and I learned a lot, and I was like, wow, I've gone through that. That's what that person does. Is that what toxicity is? And so I really educated myself for those years. And even with my relationship with my partner, eventually you know, I was able to find him and choose him with this kind of education that I got. And, you know, honestly, if it wasn't for TikTok, I wouldn't have chosen better, I guess.
That's right. So we've basically covered that. So what is a trait of a toxic person?
See, that one's a bit tricky because sometimes it's not the entire person. Sometimes it's like small things. So it's just very hard. And when you're in that relationship, you don't see it. Like you get, like for example, one of the big sort of red flags is that love bombing.
Yeah.
So when you're in the start of a relationship, and that person just bombs you, they're just like sending you text messages. If they're saying I love you within a very short span of time, and you think, oh wow, this person really cares for me, and it gives you that endorphins and that sort of serotonin, really that chemical reaction that you become addicted to it very fast. And in all honesty, that's not right. That's not exactly what you should be. That's one of the traits, is that love bombing. Definitely doing that.
100%. Like when I was younger, we'd have MSN and
MSN.
I had that.
Showing your age.
Yes. And I think one of my first relationships, me and my first boyfriend ever, we were talking to 3 a.m. every day. Like it was insane. And I thought that's what you guys do. That's what people do when they like each other. And as you said, that's love bombing. That word did not exist when I was that age. I just thought that was normal, but it's not normal to talk to someone till 3 a.m.
No,
There's
not.
no boundaries. And, you know.
Exactly. That's the right word. Boundaries. They're breaching your boundaries very fast and you don't see it.
Yeah. And I was so young, but if I had these tools that we have today, like just TikTok, like again, talking about TikTok, you know, I probably wouldn't have done that. And I probably wouldn't be in that relationship. So, it's just really interesting looking back about what you could have done, but what you can do better. And so that's definitely a huge red flag.
I think another one as well is extreme jealousy. You know how they say there's a bit of healthy jealousy in a relationship, and then there's an extreme side of jealousy. And I think another toxic trait is definitely when that person gets jealous of your time and where there's no space there. You know, if you want to hang out with your family or your other friends, and that person's demanding your complete time.
Yeah, they want to take up your entire space.
Exactly. And you know, I've been I've lived through that where, you know, I did want to balance myself out and, you know, hang out with my family or my friends, but my ex was just angry if I did.
Yeah.
And the arguments will be like, well, you know, you need to hang out with your friends and I should hang out with mine. And it was like, no, but you're my partner. You're supposed to hang out with me. I should be your number one. And that, you know, in itself is a big red flag because if you truly love someone, you have to love them for everything, for their friends and their family, and you need to give each other space. And I definitely feel like I've seen so many relationships as well where they it's just them two. It's just them two. They do everything together and they push their friends aside, their families aside.
Can I say, how about those couples that have joint Facebook accounts?
Joint social media.
accounts,
That is a whole can of worms right there, doll.
Joint email accounts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That also means you don't have that privacy.
Yeah, and that's also controlling as well, which is another trait. It's that overbearing, over-controlling. Give me your password. Let me see your phone. Let me see your messages. Who are you texting? Who's on your Snapchat list? Who's on your Instagram list? The list goes on. Like it's definitely another toxic trait is where they're so controlling of the clothes you wear. You know, I've had friends where they couldn't wear certain clothes because their partner will get so angry and they'll be called every name under the sun because it's like, why are you trying to dress sexy for someone else? You should dress that for me, or, you know.
Even to the point, I've known people where they wouldn't want them to work certain days just because they could control that.
Certain days? What do you mean by that?
Well, they'll be like, I don't want you to work on the weekends because that's when more guys are around. So how about you can only work on Mondays or Tuesdays?
I've definitely experienced
I've never heard of that before.
That's It's part of it.
Wow.
Like, you know, I've known people that have worked in retail in menswear, and the girls, once they get a partner, it's like, oh, sorry, well, they have to quit because my partner doesn't like me working in menswear.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of like, it's an insecurity as well.
Yeah, definitely insecurity. And like, I think people need to learn to respect their own time, I think. Like, enjoy having that time where you sit down and just watch TV on your own, or, you know, enjoy being single, like, but in a relationship, if that makes sense.
No, it's creating space to miss each other and have that time to sort of enjoy the time that you're actually together.
Yeah, exactly.
But when that person's consuming your entire space, your entire time, your entire everything, that's when it becomes toxic.
Yeah. And what happens with that is when you're spending every day, every hour with that partner, and you've isolated yourself, you've pushed away your friends, you've pushed away your family, you become codependent.
Definitely.
So, and then when that relationship breaks, or you're having a fight with your partner and you try to turn to someone else, there's no one there to help you out or you know, pick you up when you're down. And
that codependency also leads in, and so many people ask, why do they go back? It's that reason, the codependent, because they don't know how to be themselves outside of that relationship anymore. They don't know how to define themselves outside of who they are with this person, and that becomes such a toxic issue. And when you ask so many people, why are you going back to this person who's obviously manipulating you, mistreating you, and all these other things, because they just don't have the tools anymore to be independent.
And like, again, everything you guys say just really reminds me of my first relationship. And, you know, it's exactly that. Like, this person that I dated really took a lot of my time, and we were pretty much codependent. And again, I thought that was normal as my first relationship, but it wasn't. And he took me away from all my friends. And by the end of our relationship, I literally opened my eyes for the first time, and I was like, I have no friends. And that was such a traumatic realization of that. And I was like, I put myself in a relationship where we ended, and I lost him and lost a lot of people, you know. Luckily, you know, I had a lot of other supportive friends that kind of understood and opened their arms and welcomed me back. And I said from that day, like, I'm not going to do that ever again. Like, my friends are first, relationships are second. And I think that's something that a lot of girls, you know, like, can relate, probably can understand that. And no guy is worth your friends.
Definitely not. And I, you know, with my ex, I wasn't even allowed to hang out with my best friend.
Yeah.
And and my best friend was also in a relationship like that as well. And we actually had to hide our friendship, be friends in silent, in secret.
Yeah.
Where, you know, because if we even hung out, it was like a whole battlefield, like a war zone.
Wow.
Coming home.
That's crazy, man. Like, that's next level controlling, and I'm happy you're out of that, Alec.
No, trust me, I'm very happy that I've definitely left that.
Yeah, and that it doesn't just necessarily also mean just in romantic relationships. It can be in friendships as well. I know I had a friend that I was friends for at least a decade, and I really mean a decade. And towards, I think, the end of that, I felt I don't have friends outside of this person. I had friends, but I didn't have like those close friends. And I actually had to speak to this person and say, I need friends outside of just you. And that caused like a spiral in the relationship to the point that we're no longer friends. And it was very heartbreaking for me, like I said, platonic, but I think that was just as bad as a breakup for me.
Definitely. I think also with friendship, you know, you can be very close to someone, and when the friendship breaks, it is heartbreaking because it might not be that romantic relationship, but it's still love. You still love that person, and when that breaks, I feel like it's same pain as losing a partner.
I think it's like worse.
But it almost feels worse because your best friend is your ride or die. They love you for who you are. You can be yourself. You can talk about whatever you like. There's no judgment there. And
there's less boundaries sometimes.
Yes,
like a lot of times in romantic relationships, you tend to hold back a bit of yourself. But with friendships, especially when you become very close, you tend to open up more to certain and become more vulnerable. So when with this particular friendship, I realized at one point, I'm like, this is becoming very toxic. And I put a stop to that. I started putting boundaries up, and this person absolutely did not respect any of my boundaries. And this person became so toxic that, and she was very involved in my life, like my family, like everyone knew this person, like to the point even now people are like, oh, why isn't this person in your life anymore? And I just say, well, she moved back to another country, whatever. But like, it was realizing that, wow, I'm in this very toxic situation and I need to put boundaries and make steps to make sure that I'm not longer in this sort of relationship like that. And it obviously the person was very toxic with me, and obviously that broke apart. And yeah, like even before, like I've had romantic relationships with where it got very toxic, where I just didn't see my family or friends and was very isolated. So yeah, I do very much relate to that.
And definitely, and talking on that subject with the ex-best friend, another toxic trait is a punishment when you break their rule.
Yes.
To the point where they try to sabotage your relationship with your own other close friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that happens in toxic relationships, is that if you don't follow their rules, they will punish you.
Yeah.
In any way they can. It doesn't have to be physical, but it could be like sabotage, or it could be, we've had another friend that was very close to us all, and I considered her a best friend. We were very close. And the minute, I didn't show her the same interest, or I wasn't matching her level of codependency, because that's what she loved, for us to do everything together and try to push away the rest of my friends.
Oh, definitely.
But when I started pulling back, she went through and, decided to try to sabotage my relationships with everyone else.
Including us.
Yeah, basically you guys. And going to you guys with lies, and then coming to me with lies. And we didn't know this was happening until we all got to a boiling point where we were like, hold on 1 minute. What is going on here? And thankfully, because our bond is so strong and we've known each other basically from birth.
Yeah, well, literally.
Like our parents were, best friends when they were young, before we were even conceived. Luckily, our bond definitely, we worked through it and we persevered, and all lies were exposed, and we were able to deal with it how we knew how to. But again, I feel like that was a punishment because I didn't follow what they wanted, or what she wanted. And
that was a very trait of a narcissist. So that one would definitely fall under that.
Yes. And I feel like it's so interesting that, all these toxic relationships, it's not just a boyfriend, girlfriend, it's friends, it's families, it's a whole bunch of types of relationships, but they're all really similar. And I find it really interesting that my experience was similar to your experience as a friend that you had. And it was all because, you let this toxic person go into your boundaries. And I find it super interesting. So what about people that are predatory? What do we think about that?
Yeah.
That's a big can of worms.
That age gap where, it's I don't want to generalize, but sometimes you do see the older guy try to date the younger, the 18-year-old.
Well, that happened to me.
Yeah.
My first relationship, I was 18 years old and he was 25. And I didn't think that was anything bad. I didn't know better. And obviously because he was older, he knew how to control me, how to manipulate me, knew how to separate me from family. And I just thought that was normal because I didn't know any better.
No. I mean, at the age of 18, we think we're on top of the world.
Yeah,
we think we know it all. But, at my age now, we're 33. I'm 33. You realize that at that young age, 18, 19, 21, 20, you're actually not fully developed. Like, you're not clearly thinking. At that age, of course, you're going to think that. But someone much older than you is going to take advantage of that young mind.
Definitely. Exactly. And I think I had a small realization at 25. I was like, oh, I'm the same age as him. And then I would look at someone who's 18. I'm like, ugh, I would never date that.
Yeah,
Young.
and it reminds me of that Demi Lovato song that came out recently. It's called 17, I think. And the song's about like when she's now 30, and that guy that she was singing about is 30, dating her at supposedly 17. And that's now sparking a whole conversation about this entire, predatory of guys dating whoever it is, not a guy or girl, it doesn't matter, but like someone controlling someone at such a young age, and it's more common than we think.
No, definitely. And at 30, I believe there is another mind shift at 30. Like you get one at 25, but definitely at 30. And when I turned 30 and I thought back at that relationship, I was so angry.
Yeah, of course.
I realized just what was taken away from me at that young age, and I was so angry about that and so bitter about that. It took me a while to sort of process that and to think about, wow, this person really did take advantage of me, and I thought it was love.
Yeah.
I thought we were in love. I thought like he would, he made my world. It was like, but like I realized at 30, wow, this guy took advantage of me at such a young age, and he knew. And when we broke up, because when it was pretty nasty broke up, he actually said this to me: "You're going to hate me one day. I know you will. When you get older, you're going to know."
What?
He actually said that to me.
He said that?
That was the last conversation we had. And I was like, "You're an asshole," whatever, excuse my language. But like, as I was very angry.
Like the fact that
he said that to me.
And told you that
one day
he was a predator, that one day
I will know.
You will know.
And that's why
so
at
toxic.
30, and I had like that reflection. It's almost like I was so angry. And to be honest, he, to this day, still tries to contact me. And and I'm just like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you?
That would make me so bitter.
Yeah.
Like being his age and going, wow, he was right.
Yeah, could you imagine the person that victimized you saying, one day you're going to hate me because you know what I did to you. And I was so young, I did not know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course you didn't.
And we were together for like 4 years. So I was,
And another thing I've actually been hearing as well is that with this toxic masculinity, the alpha male, is where they talk about the young girls and how, they're easier to mold into the perfect
100%
woman.
true.
I had someone in my workplace, and this is when I was quite young, living my my 20s, and he worked with me, and then he's like, "See that girl?" I'm like, "Yeah, she's 14. That's the best age to be as a woman."
That's disgusting.
And I looked at him and I'm like, "Well, I'm 20 something. I don't remember how old I was at the time. Are you saying that I've expired?" And he's so quiet, and he was so comfortable pointing at a 14-year-old and saying, "Yeah, that's the ripest, basically, of the fruit of the age." And it was
disgusting.
such a eye opener and like a bit crazy to listen to that. I still remember today what he said.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a bit traumatic to hear that.
Yeah.
Of course. Like obviously, like it didn't affect me in that way, but I was defending it. I'm like, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
And now
To feel that he was comfortable to say that openly, that's just another
a red flag.
level. Yeah, red flag, guys.
red flag.
Red flag. Also, again, with this age predatory thing, it also works in reverse. I'm a huge fan of The Housewives. I do love my Bravo shows. And I do see it with the younger, pretty women that prey on the 80-year-olds, the 70-year-olds with a lot of money.
They're playing that stereotype.
They play that,
The sugar baby.
the sugar baby, and these men think they're in love. They think they've scored this beautiful, gorgeous woman, but really they're after financial gain or status or.
That takes a very certain type of personality to do that. Like we all the N word, the narcissist. Definitely, that's a whole kind of worms. But yeah, definitely does work the other way. Like victims are victims at the end of the day.
That's completely right.
I guess going on that, what do you think about the glamorization of toxic relationship? What do you reckon that means?
Well, the glamorization of toxic relationships, you tend to see it in Hollywood or in music, even social media trends, like certain.
Like the sugar baby.
Is it
sugar daddy?
Sugar daddy. I've seen TikToks where it's like, make his pockets hurt. Like, celebrating, just get the guy,
or like
get him for his money.
Yeah.
And,
definitely.
that's Hollywood does a perfect job of painting that perfect world and making these toxic relationships so glamorous. And it's teaching and indoctrinating another generation that's okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like, we've seen it. I mean, I hate to bring them up, but just because they're just so
I
big
know where this
and
is
so
going.
in the media, but the Kardashian clan, the whole family, almost every relationship they have is toxic. It's like going from Kris Jenner, the mom, all the way down to the youngest, who's in a relationship with it's just so toxic, the whole clan. And so many people look up to these women and try to emulate that lifestyle, and they're definitely glamorizing toxic relationships.
Yeah, that's definitely.
That's true. And I mean, hate them or love them, they have influenced the younger generation in such a big way.
Yeah.
They're monetizing the toxicity.
Basically.
100%.
They sell us this huge life, and I see it. In my everyday, I see the people that are so influenced by the Kardashians and in the way they dress and getting their BBLs and
or getting rid of the BBLs
now BBLs is out, everyone. Just newsflash, the BBL is now officially left the building. But it's also what I find is that sometimes people have an expectation, and because of these influencers and shows, they have this unrealistic expectation of what a partner should be like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people where, he's lovely, but he doesn't have money. Or I love him, but, he's not going to buy me a Rolls Royce.
What would a red flag be that we can use as a tool to protect ourselves from, certain humans?
Yeah, well, I mean, the red flags are out there. The thing about red flags is they're in your face. And sometimes we just don't want to see them. But I definitely feel like one red flag is definitely the love bombing, how you mentioned earlier. When you first meet that person and then all of a sudden 2 weeks in, they're like, I love you. We should be exclusive. I remember talking to a girl where she was like, she started dating a guy and it was like 3 weeks into the relationship and he already wanted to start like a joint account. A joint bank account, yeah.
A joint bank account?
Yeah, and he was already talking about how he loves her and how they should start looking for their own apartment.
Was this for a visa?
No, it actually wasn't. But this girl, she was just so frightened, and she was like, "He's moving too quick."
That's another flag, that moving too quick.
Well, a bank account's is so personal.
It is.
I could never imagine sharing I have a joint bank account, but I think it's very normal for couples to have their own bank accounts, then the joint bank accounts.
Yeah.
But to start off a relationship with a joint bank account,
that's a bit.
Is the biggest red flag
That's
I've
extreme.
ever seen in my life.
So what's another red flag, Kari?
Another one I've heard hasn't personally happened to me, but I've actually known a few people where it's happened to, where they'll go on a first date, or they'll start very early in the relationship, and the person will start giving them extravagant and personalized gifts. Like they'll buy the girl like, oh, here's a dress, wear this, I'm going to pick you up at a certain time. And what it's really doing, it's training this person to be used to a certain, not just a certain lifestyle, but a certain sort of controlling thing. Mm-hmm. So it's crazy that happens in the dating world.
It's definitely a power play.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because of Hollywood, people might think of it as a romantic gesture, but really it's it's actually testing the waters of how far you can control this person. Also like buying someone a perfume, or a fragrance at the beginning is like,
how do you know?
How do you know what fragrance I like? But it's that person's kind of telling you, no, this is a fragrance I want you to smell like.
Yeah, and you know what that stems from? Like for me, it reminds me, I know this is showing my age a little bit, like that Pretty Woman era. Out of that came a lot of Hollywood sort of glamorization of that kind of relationship where their men in power are controlling these girls and using the power and influence and money to cause that sort of toxic trait. And that's definitely red flag, girls. If a guy's buying you something, and guys, buying you personal things at the start of a date one, run. But
unfortunately, that is also to tie in with the whole Kardashian culture. So oh, he cheated on me, but I got a Chanel bag. Like
It's
he
okay 'cause
buys
it's
me
a Chanel
Hermes,
bag.
but he strays a little. Like the one thing that's plaguing, especially our city, is the girl dating the bad guy, knowing that he's toxic,
my goodness,
knowing
yes.
he's got red flags,
The
knowing
bad boy.
Again,
The bad boy.
that's the social media influence of relationships. So yeah, it's really crazy.
Yeah, and it's just really sad to see, because you see these girls suffering, and I don't want to generalize by saying girls a lot, but it is mainly what it is.
Look, at the end of the day, women are usually not the ones in position of power, so they tend to be the ones that end up being the victims. It does happen to men, and it happens in both straight and heterosexual relationships.
Yeah, and I think this whole dating the man that gets money somehow has definitely removed the concept of love, and it's made it very hard for like the working man, that works an honest buck. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just feel like it's really caused. I don't know. I don't know if it's right to say, but I feel like it's kind of disadvantaged good guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that right? Does it sound right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I think there's been this big discussion in the past that I've seen, personally I've seen, where what is a good guy? Sometimes the issue is there's some guys out there that'll be like, oh, I'm a good guy, but really they're not, because they're gaslighting these girls, or they're being friend zoned and trying to be friends.
So when a guy's saying, I'm a good guy,
are they really?
Like, I'm a really good guy, like...
Or like when people say, I don't lie.
They're probably the biggest
You're
liar.
lying.
I'm like, ooh, I don't like people that say... I don't trust people that say they're a good
Here's
guy.
the thing. When a person is genuinely a good person, they don't need to say those things, because their actions always outweigh what they are.
100%.
And unfortunately, because of this glamorization of the bad boys, these girls don't know what a good guy is, and that's 100% why we're talking about this. Like, we have so many friends, families that have been in these relationships, and you just learn from all your experience, and you want to help them, and it's very hard.
So again, what are your final thoughts of toxic relationship guys?
Well, my final thoughts are, read the signs, look out for it, study it, honestly, do some research into it. And if it's not good for you, leave. It will hurt. I'm not going to lie, it hurts, but the pain is temporary. You deserve happiness and you deserve respect. And if you find yourself in these kind of situations, reach out, talk to someone about it, because
Someone that you can trust.
Someone that you can trust. And sometimes the advice, and I'm a big firm believer in talking to a counsellor.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so many tools here in Australia where you can go to the doctor, or you can talk to a counsellor, and seek help, because toxic relationships can scar you for life if you don't fix it.
And it can become dangerous even.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And again, for all you Aussies there, go to your doctor, do an appointment with them, and tell them that you need to talk to a psychologist, I believe.
And get a referral.
Get a referral. He will refer you somewhere, or if you know somewhere else, they will change the letter to that person, and you get 10 free sessions. And that's for those people that really don't have that friendship group or anyone to really talk to, and they just need that external, thoughts. And I think just bringing those thoughts out there is super important.
100%.
Like, for me to get through a lot of these toxic relationships I've been, I'm so blessed to have friends that I can talk to.
Yeah.
And they listened and understood, hey, Vanessa wasn't in a great place, but let's help her. And I thought that was a really great, thing that we should all be encouraged to talk about it.
Yeah, venting is definitely okay.
Mm-hmm. And we benefited from venting to each other.
Yes.
And
at the park.
I think for me, another big takeaway is really getting to know who you are as a person, and understanding where your boundaries are, and really putting them firmly in place, having that foundation in yourself first. Because you find that when you have that strong foundation in yourself, less people will tend to not want to take advantage of you, because they know that you're too strong to be broken down that easily.
100%.
I think also, going from what your point, Kari, is enjoy being single, guys. Like really enjoy it. Because when I told my friend a couple years ago, I was saying, you know, I've been more single than I've been in relationships. But now that I look retrospectively, I'm like, but I enjoyed being single.
I love the single life.
I love the single life.
You know, some of us do, you know, some of us don't.
And don't listen to toxic love songs like that song, You're Nobody Until Someone Loves You, or something like that. Like, that is such a wrong message to be sending to people.
I've never heard this song.
It's a classic song, but
it's
it's basically saying you're nobody until someone loves you.
Yeah, value your time, value yourself over anyone. Like, be selfish with yourself. And I think it's okay to be single. Like, I love being single. I remember I was 23, single, and I was like, I love being 23. And that was such a highlight of my, and looking back at, you know, now I'm obviously older, I'm like, wow, I still remember that moment where I stood being single and I really love being 23.
Yeah. So, like, don't be afraid of being alone.
No,
100%.
no. As long as you have those people, those, you know, solid foundation of, like, really close people that you can culture in your life, that's all you really need.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Welcome to tea sessions, guys. So this is a little section that I would like to, you know, make a little bit more fun and upbeat. So what this game is about, guys, is who's the most toxic celebrity and why? Okay, so Mac, who do you think is more toxic? Megan Fox or Machine Gun Kelly?
Oh God, this one's gonna be very hard because I feel like they're equally as toxic. Look, I don't know. For me, it's that whole drinking each other's blood is what really just gets me. I don't know if that falls under toxicity or not, but that to me is so crazy.
So who do you think is more toxic in a
I
relationship?
think it's Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
Really?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think seeing that little video of him going blook and blood pouring, I was like,
On his concert, he
I couldn't do that. Like,
smashed a glass on his head and kept singing with blood dripping down his face. That was just
like
traumatic.
very dramatic, very stage worthy, but yeah, I can't even like imagine. Like, I'm pricking myself. I would be too scared to do it.
I'm scared of
But
needles.
All right, Kari,
Okay.
who's more toxic in the Kardashian clan?
Oh gosh.
gosh.
Dum dum dum.
Oh my God.
Where
They're
do you
all
start?
very toxic, but I'm gonna say Chloe. I'm sorry.
Really?
She
Why
keeps
Chloe?
going back to a guy that cheated on her so often, and she keeps going back to the same guy, and that's just the definition of being in a toxic
Oh
relationship.
yeah, for sure.
Like, to the point where she wants to have another kid with him. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I guess having that extra kid would make you the toxic person.
They're definitely.
I mean, like, look, let's put it. They're all toxic in one way or another. But if we're talking about toxic relationships, I'm sorry, Chloe takes the cake.
Yeah, that was really bad. I mean, like, we're not even going to talk about Rob and Black China because that
was-
itself was just a whole disaster.
That was something different. But yes, yeah.
Vanessa, who in the Kardashian clan do you feel is the most toxic?
Oh, you know, I haven't really thought about it, but top of my head, and it could be any of them, like
Yeah,
Mary,
Any.
the clan.
anyone that's in that clan. Okay, maybe the top of my head is Travis Barker.
Mm-hmm.
The whole little conspiracy that he has always loved Kim but went for Courtney.
Oh yes, I
that was-
heard
I don't know
this.
if that's true or not, but for
Allegedly.
me, allegedly,
Allegedly.
that's like super tox.
So yeah, the car.
Yeah, no, I've seen some blind items that are, you know, pretty questionable.
Yes. And finally, guys, for all of us, you need to do a quick reaction. Who is the most toxic in the Sex and the City?
Kerry
Carrie.
Bradshaw.
Carrie.
Unanimously voted.
She
Kerry.
is the epitome of a toxic person.
She's not just a toxic person in a relationship. She's a toxic person in a friendship group. She's a toxic person in the workplace. She's toxic everywhere.
She doesn't even give a rat's ass about her friends. It's all about her and Big and Aiden and
Like,
Petrosky.
Remember, she was having like, there was a plot line where she was like having a breakdown because of Aiden and her cheating ways, and like Miranda had just a baby, and she was just like, "I'm sorry, I'm a struggling mother. Why are you doing like I'm just
Yeah, they had
dealing
a
with
fight
new
in the
baby,
thrift store.
newborn."
It's like you're going back to him again.
Can I ask this other question? Did Kari pay Charlotte back?
That's something I've always wondered. I think she did pay her back for the loan.
I reckon Big did.
Most likely.
I reckon, in my, my theories, is that she started paying faithfully and then kind of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like, oh, Kari, when's the payment coming in? And then Big was like, I married you, I pay your debts. And then paid it after like a year of her like going around. So that's my theory.
But Samantha Jones was battling cancer and Kim Kardashian, Carrie Bradshaw was more interested in her Russian, spending time with him rather than her own
God,
friends.
that's so true.
I'm telling you, she's the most toxic person.
She's so toxic. And cheating on Aiden, I can never, ever forgive her for that.
Aiden was the epitome of what a good man looks like. He forgave her, took her back, and she did it again.
Okay, but are we talking, like, can we say that he became toxic in the movies?
I think they made him toxic to make him the bad guy.
Oh,
Just so, no one takes aim at Carrie Bradshaw.
Oh. All right, guys. So thank you for listening into the latest episode of the Park Sessions.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And it's our first episode, so congratulations to us. We've ended it. We had so much fun today, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and hopefully you guys were able to take something away from this conversation today.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll definitely want to do it again.
Yeah, guys, so follow us on Spotify to keep up to date with us with the new episodes dropping. You'll be the first to know if you follow us. So Park Sessions Podcast on Instagram, and you'll find all the info there that you need. Also, we want your DMs, so send us your DMs there, and we're always happy to hear anything you guys want to say. Like, let us all know.
Yeah, definitely. DMs are open, guys.
Yeah,
and
join in the conversation.
Yeah, join the conversation. Give us suggestions. What do you want us to talk about next?
Yes, we want to know what you want us to talk about.
Yeah. And yeah, well, thank you very much, guys. And
Thank
I think
you.
that wraps it all up today.
Yes. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you guys. Welcome to Park Sessions with your host, Mac,
Kari,
And Vanessa at the park.
where we discuss what's on our mind this week. Let's talk about current events, pop culture, conspiracies, and more. So sit back and join in on the latest sesh at the park.
Hi, guys, and welcome to today's episode of Toxic Relationships. So today we're going to be talking about a bit of relationships, friendships. So welcome, guys, for today's sesh.
Yeah, we've got some interesting topics to cover today, and we've definitely got a lot to talk about.
And I think it's a lot of our experiences too, mostly. So I think it'll be really interesting to, have this conversation because I think it's really needed.
Yeah, definitely. And we will definitely cover the topics of what also influences toxic relationships, what it looks like, what to look out for, and basically the red flags.
Yeah, we want
All the red flags.
We all need to learn red flags because, we will avoid a lot of toxicity in our lives.
And even one thing I learned, I started talking to some friends of mine, not just talking about red flags, but also green flags and what are healthy signs of someone who's actually